This week in Arsenal, Mikel Arteta extends his contract until 2027. Martin Odegaard suffers an ankle injury on international duty with Norway. Ricardo Calafiori also picks up a knock with Italy. And an Invincible thinks Jeremy Doku is more consistent than Bukayo Saka. Let's get into it.
Maybe we'll have a good surprise for you.
Welcome in to episode 69 of This Week in Arsenal. It is Thursday, September 12th, 2024. And yes, I do like our odds of this being the nicest episode of TWA so far. And with me to make it so nice are two illustrious guests. First, I'll introduce Chitty, who you can follow on Twitter at ChittyAFC. On Twitty at, yeah.
Amazing start. I love that.
Oh man, these third and fourth shots of espresso are not doing the job they're supposed to be doing. But yeah, Chitty, great to have you back on. We were talking beforehand about how things have kind of come up in the last week. I was actually really worried last week that we wouldn't have anything to talk about, but such as Arsenal that they come up with things for us to discuss. And also joining us is the one, the only James, who you can follow on Twitter at AFCJXMES. Also AFC James. I don't know. I'm trying to make sure people actually go with the right handle. You know what I mean? But guys, how are you doing?
Yeah. Happy to be back again. I think, it's been not too long since I've last been on. So I feel like I'm becoming a bit more regular on here, which is always a good thing. So looking forward to discussing everything.
Yeah. And go on. I was just going to say, it's been a while since I've spoken to Chitty. I can't remember the last podcast we were on. It was ages ago. So Sham, we've been on not too long ago, but the last time I was on a podcast with Chitty was a while ago. So yeah, excited to talk.
Yeah.
Yeah, excited to have both of you guys on. Chitty, it is great to have you on more regularly. I just felt really bad last time when you said that like the two times we've had you on have been after like major refereeing debacle. So I just wanted to change that. So
I feel like we've discussed referees for like about 2 hours combined over the two shows. I
was gonna say, I thought that was gonna be like a segment and turn into half the pod. But yeah, great to have you guys, both back on today. And like we said, there's a lot to discuss. A lot of things have come up over the national break. I guess let's just go ahead and kind of jump into the news from today first. And that is the fact that Mikel Arteta has extended his contract with the club until 2027, has, signed on and removed any speculation. Not that really it seemed likely he was going to leave, but do you guys like have any thoughts on this? I always feel like manager contracts are mostly a non-issue, but is there anything about this in particular
awful news, Sham? Absolutely diabolical. This guy, he's been with us and we've stagnated. He took us over in 8th. We've barely got better. He never plays the youth. And he's an arrogant idiot. Why should he be manager of our football club? I think it's one of the worst news that we've ever had. And we should play Nwaneri and Miles Skelly like Wenger would against Tottenham, and we'll beat them 4-1 like we did in all the away games under Wenger.
So you're asking Arteta to be brave against Spurs? Is that what it is?
Did you see the tweets? Yeah. There was one particular tweet that quite amusingly, I genuinely don't know if it's satire at this point, but pointed out that Arteta should be more like Wenger and we will win more away games, which if anyone who remembers the latter years of Wenger's tenure, we got smacked around a few times away from home, which has led to some lasting memories for some of us. And in fact, no slight on Wenger, but he won at White Hart Lane 4 times in 23 years, I think it was. And Arteta's won twice in 4 years. So, yes, Wenger had his strengths and Arteta has his strengths, but I'm not sure the way we set up away from home is something I would use against Arteta, because that's been something that has genuinely been incredible. When he first took over, one of Wenger's last seasons, I think we genuinely won like 1 game away from home or 2 games away from home. But finally Arteta's turned it around, and not just that we have Fortress at home, but we don't just lose to Watford and Norwich away. And it was ridiculous some of the times we were playing and going toe to toe with teams that shouldn't have had a sniff. But I'm going on a tangent.
No, I mean, those were very formative years for me, because I was in school at that time, like in high school, during the days of Arteta losing 8-2 to United and losing 6-0 to Chelsea as Wenger's 1,000th game, and the 5-1 loss at Anfield. Those are
multiple of those, I think.
There's one where Skirtle, they were like 4-0 up in 20 minutes.
Skirtle scored a brace, if I remember right.
Yeah, I think so.
Like, what is going on? Like,
Also, I'll throw in the 4-4 draw at St. James's Park, because frankly, I think that's one of the most pathetic games I've ever seen in my life. That's. I love Wenger. Wenger is still the GOAT when it comes to, managers at Arsenal. I still think he's one of the greatest Premier League managers of all time, but big away days were not his thing. And Arteta has shown a bit of, a knack for getting something, in away games. Obviously, at the beginning of his tenure, squad wasn't there, but, I think as we move forward, he's at least been pragmatic.
Sorry to interrupt, Sham. Even then, we beat Chelsea at Stamford Bridge a few times. We beat Man U. Now, we weren't getting the results against Liverpool and City because the golfing class was too big. But we were going 3-4-3. Smith Rowe was scoring a goal against Chelsea and shutting up shop. There was some, even if we think back to the FA Cup run, there were some really, really big performances, even in Arteta's early years. It wasn't the prettiest to watch, I think we can all admit, but Arteta found the solution. So the same people also who are now saying they want Wenger's style back were the ones holding up the banners they weren't in the stadium, but they were the ones on Twitter bad-mouthing him at the time. They're just grumpy, man. It makes me laugh, but just leave it to it.
The thing with this as well is that, like, Wenger's most successful teams, he was playing Gilberto and Vieira.
Yeah.
Like, that's 2 DMs, if you want to call it by Twitter standards these days. I mean, they're not really DMs because they're all action midfielders, but they would call it playing with 2 DMs in this day and age. And that's how we played and had our best successful period. So why do people want to reminisce the Wenger football that didn't win anything, that went on the trophy drought of 9 years, that was notoriously soft away from home against all the good teams? Why do people want to go back to that rather than go back to real peak Wenger? Even like 2006 Wenger that didn't concede a goal all the way in the knockouts of the Champions League, that was based on defense. That was successful. So that is what we should be trying to get back to, not playing nice football, but entertaining people and losing 3-0 away. Like, no one wants to go back to that. Let's be serious. So that's my piece on that.
Yeah, I think people, I think this kind of ties into the whole nostalgia kick that everyone seems to be on these days, where everyone's and I've enjoyed a lot of the comps, right? A lot of the nostalgia Barclays men comps have been great, but I think people are starting to act like the likes of Steed Malbranc, and Giovanni are better than a lot of the players that we have now, and that's just not the case. The standard has
Also,
increased. Yeah,
people so quickly forget that there were just on paper there are so many more goals. The amount of goals scored has drastically increased. Now, yes, I understand the concept of there was a period where individual talent was able to shine more, but it's so overblown. If you watch Bolton versus Blackburn 2006, it was just those hoofing it. It was so unentertaining, and no one watched it back then. I think part of the problem, actually, I hadn't thought about it until now, but is that so many games are now available to watch for 90 minutes.
Yep.
So people would never find themselves watching a Burnley Bolton before because it's a 3 o'clock kickoff. The only people who are watching it are in the stadium.
Yeah.
Nowadays, people will watch a 12:30, a 3 o'clock, a 5:30, a 2 p.m., a 4 p.m., Friday and Monday. And by that point, there are some bad games on TV. You don't have to watch them. But fair enough if people do watch them, but don't complain about the quality because it's a different style of football. It's not to everyone's taste. But people just weren't watching those games before because there weren't good games and nothing was on TV.
Yeah. No, I mean, as an American getting into football, back in the mid 2000s, I remember most of the time when I told people I was a football fan, they'd be like, "What? You're watching soccer? You're getting up at 7:30 in the morning to watch Fox Soccer Channel? They don't score any points, buddy. You're sitting there for 2 hours and they're not doing anything." And then they talk about, how exciting baseball was or something. But, like back in the day, people thought it was a boring sport. And there's still plenty of Americans who do think that because they don't have taste. But, more and more Americans are getting into the sport for a reason. And that's because it's becoming a very action-packed product. So, the nostalgia thing is great and all. And there are a lot of amazing players from back in the day who I love reflecting on. But, let's be serious about how crazy the standard is these days.
I mean,
And
I
just-
read I read there was actually a really good BBC article that came out like yesterday, I think, where they talked about like the stats behind, like the death of the long shot basically. And like one of the charts that stood out to me was if you look at the pass accuracy from like early Premier League to now, it's gone up like 10 or 15%. This is like the average pass accuracy over like every game in the Premier League. So this is like a joint jump from like 70% to like 80+%. And you can imagine the difference in the style of football and the quality. Because imagine 70% pass accuracy game. You can't even imagine that right now.
But occasionally, have you seen those clips circulate Twitter where it's just hoof, head, head.
And
And
it's
the
like
ball
games like
stays in the air.
it's
for
like Arsenal
20
versus Chelsea as well.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah.
Arsenal versus Chelsea, like a proper like big game. And they're literally just hoofing it up. I mean, you just like take a touch, like give it to the fullback, like just rebuild.
It's so Sunday
just
League.
not-
Honestly, it looks like Sunday League.
Yeah. And that's
I
the
am
top
shocked
level.
though. I'm shocked there were not more goals considering that because they didn't keep the ball. The ball just kept shifting hands. So you'd think there were,
Yeah.
but just the nature of it, the chaos. That's why it also on SofaScore recently they released the Champions League stats and people are like, Vieira got 20 tackles. How? And then you watch these clips and you're like, oh, this is how Glenn Johnson's made 24 tackles because he's getting dribbled at every 2 minutes. It's literally absurd. I've never seen anything like it.
Every second touch is a duel, basically, because you're never in control of the ball. It's ridiculous, yeah. But as you say, like I think if you actually watched 90 minutes of those games, you would realize. Like I think I've talked to people before who've said they've gone back and actually watched games, and they're actually shocked how different it is, and the lack of quality even among some of the top teams. And like there were genuine weak links in every team who couldn't really play football, like especially at centre back and everything. Now everyone's a ball playing centre back, everyone's a ball playing keeper, even the fullback, so technical. Everyone can do everything. So naturally, the standard of play is just better, and of course, it means that attacking has become more like structured because it has to be more structured because defenses are no longer just pressing randomly and out of position.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the other thing is that people will be like, attackers are playing with patterns and stuff. All right, stick Hazard against some of these because unbelievable dribbler. But the way players nowadays, you look at Saka, people are like, Saka doesn't complete 4 dribbles a game. Look at the situations he finds himself in. Yeah, if we were a defensive team, a Crystal Palace, he'd get more space. But because of the way teams play against us, they're like, right, we're just going to back up. and then Saka's against 3 players. So gone are the days that you will get that space. And look, you can blame the attackers if you want, but it's largely the defenders. If you stuck some of these attackers back in the day, they would be so good. They would be so good if you stuck Eze back 15 years ago. He'd dribble past half the team. It was just the nature of the game. The last thing I was going to say was also there was someone did an August comp of the goals. Like it was just the first month of the Premier League. And then someone like very nicely pointed out that if you put a filter on that and like an old tune, it would look it just gave the same memories because the goals were good, the clips were good. There was a lot going on. Just people have that same nostalgia when you bring it back. I get it, but it does make me laugh that people are so like keen to bash the league at the moment when it's fine. Yeah, shout out to Rapt and Ben Arthur, but if they were playing nowadays, I promise you they wouldn't find as much joy.
Yeah, no. Again, I think the standards have gone up, and it's a much more tactical game than it used to be. I think managers are bigger stars than they used to be. But also, I think on top of all that, the schedule is just crazier. Like when you talk about Saka not completing 4 dribbles a game. If he completed 4 dribbles a game and played 50, 60 games a season, that's insane for him, right? And so, the top end footballers now, they have to do 38, 40 games of the league season. And then, they have the domestic cup games, and then the Champions League just expanded and gave them more games on top of that. The international schedule has gotten out of control, as I'm sure we'll touch on in a little bit. There are so many games for these guys to have to play that, part of it now is really just about conserving yourself a little bit, about, playing in a way where it's not 100 miles an hour, 90 minutes a game, 52 weeks a year. It's, so I do think that's also something that people factor in. Like in the old days, players were maybe doing 35, 40 games a season, 50 if you were, on one of the better teams. But I feel like that's more of a pedestrian number these days.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But, very happy that Arteta has signed on until 2027. Really excited to have him.
Also, can I just say, also a Barclays man. He was a Barclays man back in the day. And someone said, either you live long enough. I can't remember what the quote was. But basically, because he's carried on managing, he's no longer a Barclays man. He's lost it. He's lost his status because he's become too woke with his modern tactics.
See, this is by the way dumb though, because he gets called like a woke manager, but then they call him Tony Pulis at the same time. So what is it? Like, is he woke or is he like an old school Brexit manager? Like, you can't have it both ways. But they just hate Arsenal. So
he's a centrist. That's what he is. It's a goddamn centrist manager. So tell you what, let's do this. So we were talking before the pod about doing I wanted to play this little game called Worst Take of the Break, because I feel every international break, football Twitter devolves into chaos. And whenever we go an extended period without football, right? I think people are just left to their own devices a little too long, left alone with their thoughts. And people start saying things that don't make any sense. So I wanted to kind of go around and have each of us say what we thought was the worst take that we saw online over the break, and then kind of talk about it. So, Chitty, do you want to start us off?
Yeah. Well, there was a few that I could think of. One was that Wenger tweet about him being a master of away games, clearly. But the couple I wanted to pick out was the first one. I don't know if it was a bad take, because I guess it's someone basically tweeted out. I think someone tweeted out a lineup of Arsenal, how they should line up against Spurs, and then they quoted this tweet saying, "Oh, Saka can't play CM. What kind of stupid take is that?" And okay, it's not like it's a hard one, because obviously we haven't seen Saka playing in centre mid for a long time, but he has played there a few times before. And I feel like, I don't know if they forgot he played there before or what it was, but like he's clearly has played there and he's played there a few times. I don't know if I want to play him there for this game, but I think it was a bad take to say that he can't play there. Like, what a terrible
Yeah, I can back
idea
that.
that
I
is.
can back that.
So I don't think that was like the worst take, but like I wanted to bring that one up because that could come into it later. But I think the worst take I saw was from a rival fan, but about Arsenal, and they said that the Havertz gas was like overblown. I think a lot of people were saying that because I think was it BT Sport tweeted out some compilation about Havertz has improved a load over the last 12 months or so, and they said that it's just mass gaslighting. And one of the things they said was that Havertz only performed in the everybody eats part of the season. And I was like, okay, is there an everybody eats
How
part
long?
of the season?
How long does that go on for?
And we were in a title race. It's not an everybody eats part of the season when we're trying to win the bloody title. Like, it doesn't count.
Sorry, it was March verts, April verts, May verts. It keeps going.
Yeah.
Then it's everybody eats verts.
We just got done with August verts.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's gonna stop soon, guys.
And in 2024, he's got the third most contributions in the league behind, I believe it's Palmer and Haaland.
Yeah.
What are we doing here? What are we doing here? Why are we still? And it does make me laugh because just to jump onto that, Chelsea fans say that it's the same Havertz at Chelsea. It's the same guy. Okay. He's not changed one bit. Nothing.
I don't know where they're going with this because it's like, okay, so either what they're saying, he's the same guy, he's just surrounded by better players. So you're saying your team is complete crap? Okay, true. But...
Exactly.
Okay, true, yeah. But I mean, like, why?
There's no way they could win. There's no
way you can win because either he's improved with a better coach or your team is crap and he's improved with better players.
Or it's a horrible environment.
Yeah, exactly. And that no one can succeed in because either way, like, just accept that someone who comes in, especially because they call like the title run of the season, like, crunch time, the time where it shows who's who and who's not. And the fact that he basically put up a goal or assist per game through that whole period, for me, he's got so much credit in the bank from that period because he was probably the best player in the running.
Some big games too. In some
like,
big games,
big games. He scored against Tottenham. He got the assist against United. He scored twice against Chelsea. Like, what more do you want a player to do during that period of games? Like, I'm sorry. He's got a ton of credit in the bank for me based on that run of games. And he's carried it on to start the season, 2 goals and an assist. So I've got nothing out of all the players in our starting lineup. Right now, he's probably got one of the least worries for me in terms of like his position and his like general output because he's been doing it for a long time. No.
The cherry on the cake of that argument too was, I think it was Nagelsmann came out and said, Havertz has improved massively over the last 2 years, and that was, it was like, okay, so now, now Chelsea fans, Arsenal fans are saying it. Oh, and Nagelsmann is just saying it to wind up Chelsea fans. He doesn't believe it at all. Like,
just the difference in the last year. I mean, I remember when he came to Arsenal, and the guy looked broken the first few games that he played, and most of us, myself included, right, we're just like, holy shit, like we spent 65 million on a guy who like doesn't remember how to play football, right? He looked awful the first couple months he was here, and then things started going for him. The team rallied around him. Arteta, I'm 100% sure was also like backing him and working on him in training, and fast forward to the end of the season, and even now he looks a completely different player. That guy believes in himself on the pitch for Arsenal and for Germany. And it's, he has 24 goal contributions now, in his first year at Arsenal.
And also he was rushed in a lot more than I think Arteta would have liked because Partey is completely unreliable and wasn't fit. Like every time Klopp and Guardiola used to do this really well. Fabinho at the start when he came in, it took him 6 months to become a starter. Rodri, it took him 2 years. A lot of like Bernardo Silva didn't come in and set the world alight straight away. They let these guys understand the system, whereas Havertz basically had to take on a new role immediately without preparation, a very different role from what he was used to. And I think striker vastly simplified that role for him. And to be honest, I don't think we'll see him really go back to midfield, potentially this game because he has to. But I think he's been far too good up front for us to go back to that. And look, maybe he is the same player, but environment is king. And there's a reason why Man City have so few flops. Because if you put someone in an environment that allows them to thrive, then they will so. So it's like if we signed João Felix or if we signed a few of these Chelsea players, they would have been a lot more successful than they've been at Chelsea because it's just a toxic environment that doesn't allow anyone to thrive.
Well, I mean, their owners are going to war with each other right now.
Yeah.
You know, like I swear every week I feel like something comes out about Chelsea that's even worse than what we heard about, the previous week. They have a manager who is coming out and, well, I mean, actually, I want to take it back a step from that. They fired Pochettino when Chelsea's underlying metrics had them looking like a top 4 team in the league.
Yep.
Thank you for that, by the way. Looking forward to him take the U.S. men's national team to a World Cup win. Going to be very fun for me. He won't do that. But they fired Pochettino. They hired Maresca because he looks like bargain brand Pep. This guy came out and said, I don't like some of these players that we have. Raheem Sterling isn't my kind of winger, yada, yada.
I love the way he's painted out to be such, not a yes man at all, when he was definitely pressured to get rid of Sterling because of wages. He then signed Sancho. What is your type of winger? What do you want?
Just the one that they like right now. That's who it is. And also, like, they have like 45 guys on the wage bill. Half of them are training separately. If I'm a manager who, comes in and, the club I've just started working for is like, oh yeah, by the way, we've got 45 guys. You're not allowed to use half of them. And we're just going to have these guys training every day on a separate pitch, but you can probably still see them every day. Like, would your response not be to laugh nervously and be like, what the fuck? What do you...
What happens when they start getting injuries, though, and some of these players come in? It's going to be so weird when he's like, oh, you've been estranged for a few months. Sorry, can you come back here? Yeah. We need you again.
Hey, I know I said in August that you were pretty useless, but we've had 5 injuries at right wing.
Who are you again? Oh yeah, you. Come here. You look like a winger.
They got to do the thing where they have to sing a song to the rest of the teammates again, just like
they're reinitiated. Oh man,
yeah, that place is a disaster. So I mean, for people to say that Havertz hasn't improved at all is hilarious because I mean this guy came from probably the worst atmosphere in the Premier League to I would say one of the best currently. So
also just the final point on that, people underestimate. You can say fine, they're training on different pitches. He has a manageable squad, but they're still going to be they're still friends. So they're still kind of mates with people who are being. And if Sterling's mates with Madueke, whatever, he's going to be pissed off. So if then Maresca starts performing badly, there's going to be players who aren't in the squad getting in the ear of those who are starting, saying, this guy's shit, let's get rid of him. And the same cycle is going to go over and over again. And with Chelsea now, they've set up this long-term project that they can't do what Arsenal did when we had to get rid of these players and we had to buy out their contracts because they were getting rid of managers. It's just going to be, they're just going to have these guys for ages. And they've got no loyalty towards Chelsea. So any of them that outgrow Chelsea will just leave.
I mean, all of these players have been signed over 3 or 4 different managers. So there is no project there. At least when Arteta did it and it was all under one manager, he could assess the players, see who was suitable. Okay, some of the signings didn't work out. That's natural, especially at the start of a rebuild. But at least, there was some continuity there. But all these players, one of them might be good for, I don't know, Pochettino when he was there or Graham Potter when he was there, but might not suit Maresca. So it's sort of like a mismatch of so many different types of players that clearly
these 10-year deals as well. I don't understand it because fine, the concept of the 10-year deal is fun if you're just going to keep that player on 60 grand a week and hold them hostage. But it doesn't work like that, because after a season or two, they're going to play over 60k a week and say, excuse me, I want some more money, or others I'm going to kick a fuss and leave. So they've already had to, and look, fair enough, because Palmer's been unbelievable, but they've already extended Palmer's contract, Jackson's contract. So everyone else is going to start creeping up as well. So
someone tried to cook you for that, I remember. Because
yeah,
you said,
I know, twice.
yeah, you said,
I had him twice.
And they were like, nah, Jackson won't get a new deal. Like literally like 2 days after or something. It was like Jackson's getting a new deal.
Oh, like, right, okay. And then all it does is leave players like Kepa who don't work out, and they've got 5 keepers on 10 years deals. What are they going to do apart from sell them to their sister clubs?
Yeah.
Don't know.
They got clocked
It's
for
not
that
our
as well,
problem.
so I don't think they can do that anymore.
That was so funny. That was so funny. David Washington, they were going to make 6 million profit after a year.
Yeah.
When he made like 26 minutes of senior football, and then all of a sudden the negotiations broke down with themselves. It was like,
yeah. It's like they realized that they were about to be caught for selling a player to themselves.
Yeah, apparently, didn't someone report that part of the reason they pulled out was because they didn't want the Premier League coming after them for that deal?
Yeah. It was, it's just a joke.
Just a lot going on at that club. I look forward to the show. I just, that's gonna be when things get choppy for us every once in a while this season. Chelsea's gonna be there to cheer me up, so I'm looking forward to that. My worst take of the break actually is sort of similar to this in a way. So like in the way that people are talking about how Havertz hasn't improved really at Arsenal, I want to talk about how certain West Ham accounts have come out and said that Declan Rice has regressed under Arteta. Because I think it was hilarious, especially how things kind of played out after that, where the next day Rice was nominated as a Ballon d'Or finalist. I think that was a good job. And then I think it was the day after that, Rice scored and assisted against Ireland, which was also fun to see. So, yeah, just I think that's a hilarious take. But I want to get you guys' thoughts on that first.
I'll let you go, Chidi.
Okay. I mean, I don't know how this sort of narrative has come about, because I feel like, okay, it was the Euros. I think generally people felt like he underperformed at the Euros. Okay, I think he was up and down in the Euros. He had some really good games where I would probably say he was man of the match in a couple of games. Really, he didn't get it, I don't think, but he was really good. And then he had maybe 1 or 2 pretty mediocre games, let's be real. And I don't think he was like the worst performer for England by a stretch. I think he was like overall one of the better performers, but I think the lows sort of stuck in people's minds a while. And like, he had a couple of mistakes and people were like, oh, this guy, he can't even play football. Like, he's crapping the ball. This is why Arteta had to move him from six into playing 8, all this sort of narrative. And then, yeah.
Can I just say also that literally happened because Havertz wasn't working in the 8. That's why we did it. Nothing to do with the Rice.
Like, if Rice was seen as like this disaster 6 that we need to move, then we would have signed a 6 this summer, probably. We wouldn't have signed Marino, because clearly Marino is coming in to be that first choice left 8 midfielder. Yeah. And so Rice can play in the 6, because clearly our first choice midfield when everyone's fit is very obvious. So Rice is going to play 6 when everyone's available. But it's just, for now, because we have so many injuries and we don't have enough players in that position, he has been forced to play in 8. But clearly he's been fine at 6. People forget start of the season when literally none of the midfield was doing anything apart from Rice. He was carrying our team. He was literally player of the month 2 or 3 seasons 3 months in a row. He was scoring goals. He was defending like a maniac. He was literally anchoring the team, and because Odegaard was pretty mediocre till November. Havertz was doing nothing in midfield. There was literally just Rice on his own, and he was carrying. Have people forgotten that at all? But I don't know. People have, I think. But clearly, it's a bad take. But I think obviously West Ham fans somehow salty that he moved to Arsenal still. They wish he went to Man City for some reason. Don't know, this whole bromance in Man City, very weird. But yeah, they don't like that Arsenal have the ability to pull that sort of player from them to come to Arsenal. They still have this image of Arsenal as being this second tier big six club in terms of like, you know, still a banter club, still club that no one takes seriously. We've come and taken their best player, like, okay, they're salty. And they've made
And he crashed it. He crashed it in on their heads at the London Stadium.
In a 6-0. Let's not forget that.
Playing, by the way, playing at number 6. So I made a graphic because
and he scored the 6th goal, didn't he? Okay.
Last season. Last season, I was making a graphic because he was getting man of the match almost every game.
Yeah.
So against Man United at the Emirates, he was in defensive mid at number 6.
Mm-hmm.
He got man of the match against Chelsea at Stamford Bridge. He was playing left centre mid that game. But to be honest, I don't think he had the best game. He just scored that goal, which was the reason he got man of the match. He got man of the match away at Wolves, big game. He got man of the match against City at left centre mid. He was solid that game there, I will admit. Brighton, DM. West Ham, DM. Luton at Kenilworth Road, massive game that game. Scored the winning goal again, DM. Brentford at the G-Tech, DM. And Selhurst Park, DM. A lot of these away games at DM, he was massive because our midfield was non-existent and he was just carrying the team. So for people to turn around and based off a dysfunctional England team and make all these sweeping statements, and he hasn't had the best start to the season, but he admitted himself he wasn't fully fit.
Yeah.
So hopefully after this red card, he'll come back and be the Declan Rice we know and love. But I would like to see him back at 6 because that's his strongest position. That's what
I think. Also on that, I feel like he's been, even playing 8, he's been misused this season. Like in terms of he's not even getting on the ball for some reason.
Yeah.
Like if you see like the number of touches he's getting per game, and like even when he was playing 8 last season, he wasn't playing like that in terms of like the involvement, and he was still sort of coming deeper but coming forward, whereas this season he seemed to be receiving literally.
I guess Timber playing left.
I think that's
inverted
probably
left back might be a reason, but that's not gone tremendously for me so far. I haven't loved Timber at left.
I did speak about it last time I was on here. I think it's the fact that he's right-footed, and I feel like the spaces are being clogged up a bit, and also he's not as good as passer as Zinchenko in that sense. So I think him inverting isn't being very effective. I think he's got
levels to go to. Don't get me wrong. I think he can be better than he has been. I don't think he's been at his best self, but his just passing has, as you say, his passing has not been as clean as Zinchenko. And I still think I'm still waiting for Calafiori in that role. I just think his physicality just will help protect the defense, having basically when Mourinho comes in, Rice and Calafiori patrolling in front of the defense. Then you can just tell Odegaard, do whatever you want, pal. We don't want you defending too much. You can help him build up a bit, but ultimately we need you close to goal, because when him and Saka can make stuff happen, that's where we score.
Yeah, I just feel like this all started with this weird narrative during the Euros that Rice was just like a tackle merchant who couldn't pass the ball for shit, right? And I remember Van der Vaart came in. Actually, let me read the quote. He said 100 million euros for Declan Rice. Incorrect. 100 million pounds. What does he do? He comes to collect the ball only to pass it back to John Stones. He is useless. If you are truly worth 100 million euros, then you should be able to play a ball forward. During the Euros, Rice had the 12th most progressive passes of any player in the tournament, and he had the 5th most passes into the final third of all players at the Euros. So, I think this narrative that Rice can't pass forward is really weird and unfounded. Yeah, he's not like the most incisive, deep-lying playmaker of all time, right? He's not Pirlo. He's not Busquets in that sense. But I still think, he's a really good progressive passer who at least fits into the way that we want to build up. Also, crazy center of the ball. I feel like no one really talks about that as much as it should be spoken about. But yeah.
Someone said, Sham, that was really interesting. I can't remember who said it. Literally just yesterday said that Busquets essentially made everyone believe that a number 6 had to be like as good on the ball as a playmaker.
I think that was Riquelme. Riquelme said
Yes,
that.
yes,
Yeah.
I think it was. And it's true. Is that like, yes, not like it's good to have a 6 who's good on the ball, but it doesn't have to be Sergio Busquets. Do you know what I mean? Like, especially for the way that we play, because Rodri is unbelievable for Man City, but also they concede more transitions than us. So they have a weaker underbelly than us. So the way that we want to play, Rice is absolutely fine as long as you have a left centre mid who can progress the ball naturally. Now, Havertz didn't do that. It just didn't suit him. Mourinho, in my eyes, as soon as he comes in, it's perfect because he will be able to knit together. So he takes some of the pressure off, and it's not going to be before people put a lot of pressure on Rice. Firstly, he wasn't bad on the ball at all. But secondly, everyone just ran away from him.
Yeah.
You've still got to have players in close proximity to be able to progressive passes don't have to be 60-yard switches. To be honest, often those passes are overrated because by the time the ball's floated to a player, the whole of the team have shifted. Progressive passes can technically just be a 5 or 6 yard incisive pass through the lines, which will then get Mourinho through, and then we can beat the press. But when Havertz was next to Rice, he didn't really understand the positioning. It wasn't natural to him. So Rice didn't have those options. We've seen enough from Rice to suggest it's not a him problem. He's not Busquets, he's not Rodri, but he's more than capable of doing that. And I think he's learned a lot at left centre mid as well. We saw, I can't remember which game, he was making some really nice outside of foot flicked passes between the centre back for Martinelli, I think it was.
Yeah. And, I think just on top of that, like you guys mentioned earlier, he played every minute at the Euros, right? Every possible minute, and then came back, played a little bit in preseason, and then went straight into the Premier League season, right? The guy has not had a break. He's probably exhausted. In a way, if it weren't for the fact that we were playing Spurs the game he was out, the red card might honestly be a blessing because he's going to get a week off just to come in and hopefully be a little bit more up to speed when he does return. So I feel like people are just pouncing on Rice at a very opportune moment when he's clearly not at his best. And yeah, I fully expect him to come back and,
this
be
also,
the same Rice I remember.
Sorry to interrupt, Sham. This also goes back to the Barclays men thing, because Gerrard, Lampard, these guys, Vieira, they weren't 9 out of 10, 38 games a season. Like, they had probably a month where they weren't as good. But and I'm not comparing Rice to them yet, maybe one day. But this idea that players can't have bad games is such a social media 2024 thing, because every single misplaced pass is scrutinized. It's crazy. That's what I mean. This is why people enjoy football less, because they force themselves to.
Yeah.
It's not even just the 90 minutes. You have the comps afterwards. People make all action comps, or this person tried 100 dribbles and only made 5 of them, and it's like, all these sort of agendas and things you see that, like, it just never happened like 15, 20 years ago. Like, you didn't even discuss football online as much. Maybe you had a forum you talked on a little bit, but apart from that, you just discuss with your mates, and that would be it, really.
Yeah, no one's in the pub saying, did you see Saka? Every time he was in a one-on-one, he was just one-on-one, not 2-on-1, and he only completed 2 out of 7.
I was going to say. By the way, I watched that comp. Almost every single one of those one-on-ones, there was a guy like 2 feet to the left waiting to jump in. Like, these were all like 1-on-2s, 1-on-3s. I don't know where this guy got.
Even ignoring that, it was actually an impressive comp, to be honest. Like, he was getting passes, man, like, alone. I was like, mate, if you took off the annotations, this could be a nice comp for me,
Also, it's stupid because they only included dribbles that he'd actually done. And when he's 2-on-1 or 3-on-1, he probably doesn't attempt to dribble because he's smarter than that, and he passes the ball off. So also, why are you going to... Another thing about modern football, players are more efficient. So why would he try and dribble against 3 players when he can do a 1-2 with Odegaard and get past them? There was one, I don't know if it was in that comp, where I think it was against Newcastle or something. There were genuinely like 4 players around him. He wriggled through them, passes to Odegaard, and gets the ball back. He didn't score, but some of the situations he gets out of is unbelievable. So out of all the players to pick on, go on.
Yeah, so one of the clips was the Villa game where he like got tackled, but like he still kept the ball, and then they cut it off just before he got on the ball and then squared it for Trossard to score. And they were like, "Oh yeah, unsuccessful completion." Like he literally basically created a goal like 10 seconds after that. So do we care about? Oh, he failed that dribble at that point. Like what the hell? Yeah.
Well, Sam, while we are in the topic of Saka, shall I?
Yes.
Of all the things to criticize Saka for, I was going to say dribbling isn't one of them. Something else that you probably shouldn't criticize Saka for is his consistency. Because Saka, for me, as I tweeted, is one of the most consistent players in the Premier League, if not the world. But my bad take of the break is really, really disappointing because I don't know loads about Robert Perez's character, but as a player, I have a lot of respect for him, and I think his ability was overlooked because Henry and Bergkamp are so spoken about, and Vieira. Why are you speaking? Just stop talking. So for those who haven't seen it, I'm surprised, but Robert Perez decided to go on record and say that Doku is better than Saka, is a better dribbler, and is more consistent, which is interesting. To suggest Saka is not consistent is one thing. To suggest Saka is less consistent than Doku, who got about 50% of his goals and assists in a single game last season against Bournemouth, when 2 of them were deflected, is mental. And there's so much to unpack here, because first of all, if you think that, keep it to yourself, because no one wants to hear it, and we're sick of our ex-players bashing the players for no reason. And secondly, it's not true. It's not true by any metric. Why are we bringing this up? I don't understand. Like,
I don't get his point at all. I mean, even the game against, was it Chelsea when they played first game of the season? They played Chelsea, and like if you watch Doku, yes, okay, he has got that one dribble move that is fairly effective. Okay, yes, and like I will never question his ability to beat a man, but some of his decision making is terrible. Like City fans will tell you this personally. Like this guy, like you never know what you're going to get with him, because you can't rely on him to like make good decisions over 90 minutes, which is why his goals and assists aren't as good as what they should be with the level of ability he could have, because it's a big part of the game is making the right decision at the right time, which Doku barely does. I think he's really weak in that regard. So I think even just watching one game like that Chelsea game where he made so many bad decisions and played pretty poorly.
Put it this way, give them both to the greatest manager of all time, and I have a feeling I know which one he'd rather play. So that is, yeah.
So because I have seen people like try to say that these quotes are being taken out of context. This is from an interview that he did with Wet Basis, which is the perfect publication to refer to in episode 69 of the podcast. And he's asked, is Bukayo Saka the best winger in the league right now? If not, what does he need to do to reach the level? And he says, Bukayo still lacks a certain level of consistency and experience, and especially in the big games. Perhaps this season, especially in the Champions League, he will show a more convincing face than last season when it counts. And then, unprompted, goes on to say, for example, in my opinion, Jeremy Doku from Manchester City is a bit better because he is technically stronger.
Oh, so he wasn't even asked.
Skills.
He wasn't even asked about those two.
That's disgraceful. I can't that.
Has better dribbling skills and is more imaginative. This is wrong so many times. Okay, first of all, let me just pull these stats really quickly. Here we go. In the 21-22 season, Saka had 19 goals and assists. In 22-23, he had 26 goals and assists. Last season, he had 34. This season, he already has 4 goals and assists in 3 games. He reached 100 goals and assists in 210 matches for the club. He has more PL goals and assists than Ronaldo did before their 23rd birthdays. He's scored or assisted against every Premier League team he's faced. And he's I think he's 1 goal behind Rashford and like a few goals behind Kane in terms of goals and assists in the Premier League before their 24th birthday, and Saka just turned 23. If Saka has the same season that he had last season, he'll pass Ronaldo and Lukaku in that stat. So I don't understand where this take that he's not consistent came from. And also, he needs to do it in the Champions League. This guy almost won the game for us against Bayern Munich. If it wasn't for the fact that David Raya and Gabriel had a brain fart 10 minutes later, we'd be remembering that goal as, probably his statue, in front of the Emirates. So I don't understand where this is coming from. And this is the second time that he's come out and been like, I think Doku's better than Saka. So,
I was going to say, because I thought he said this before, didn't he?
Yeah.
He rates, but to be fair, he rates Doku really, really highly because he said Doku's better than Son as well. So it wasn't just Saka. The only player he had ahead of Doku was Salah.
Yeah, it was this video where I think it was kind of like a trend for a while where you'd walk up to famous footballing figures and ask them like, this player or this player. So it was Saka or Martinelli. He said Saka, and then Saka or Luis Diaz Saka, and then Saka or Son Saka, right? And then it was Saka or Doku, and you're saying they're thinking, well, that's easy, Saka, and he's like, Doku.
He just loves the dribbles, I guess. That one dribble move has got him by the balls, clearly.
Yeah. And it's just hilarious because, like James said, Doku is like one of the most inconsistent players I've ever seen in my life. That guy will get the ball on the left wing and he'll look absolutely terrifying and he'll probably beat his man, and then he will do the worst thing you could possibly do with the ball after he does that. He'll let it run out of play. He'll just boot the ball to the other end of the pitch and just completely cross over everybody. He'll do like the most narrow cutback and miss everybody. And then like maybe every once in a while the ball will deflect into like Haaland's path for a goal. But like, I don't understand where he's getting this opinion that like Doku is like this superior, perfect winger. One of those guys got nominated for the Ballon d'Or shortlist, and it wasn't Jeremy Doku. That's all I'm gonna say. So
does that win bad take of the break, Sham?
I think it does. And like, I've seen a lot of people getting on the timeline today being like, how darest thou question the legend that is Robert Perez? And it's like, like he's an invincible, like no one can take that away from him. He's one of the best players in Premier League history, great guy. I'm sure. Perez, please come on the pod and defend yourself if you want to. We'd be happy to have you. But like, what are you talking about here? That's all I'm saying. So.
It's the same people who are like, I think I saw a lot of United fans are like, oh, you can't question Perez, he's your legend. Meanwhile, when Gary Neville said something, or when Roy Keane said something about one of their best players, they're like, oh no, you shouldn't go after like Rashford or whatever. Like, it's like you can't have it both ways. Like, these legends are not infallible people at the end of the day. Like, they have their opinions, and some of them are bad takes. Like, that's just how it is. Like, it doesn't matter like who they are. Like, it doesn't mean we have to agree with what they say. We'll always respect them, but we don't have to agree with them or think it's a good take at all.
Yeah. Depends how many pieces. Not to sound like the worst guy from college, but the marketplace of ideas. So people are allowed to say what they think, and we're allowed to say what we think of what they think. So so I do think that does win worst take at the break, but like we've said, there have been plenty. Let's go ahead and talk about the Odegaard situation, though, right? So for those of you who are somehow unaware, there's been a lot of dooming in the last few days. I've partaken as well. and that's around the fact that Martin Odegaard was playing for Norway on international break, got his ankle done by, was it Baumgartner for Austria?
Yeah.
Left the pitch in tears. He was able to walk off with assistance, which I think is encouraging. But it's pretty certain, I think, at this point that he's going to miss at least a few games. And I think the most recent reporting indicated that we're probably looking at him returning either during or after the next international break. So, I guess my question is it over? Are we screwed? James, I'll hand that to you first.
Is it over? Is it over? Get out of here, Sham. Get out of here. What is a bit crazy is we have our first choice midfield three out, and you look at it, and I know people are doing me, but I still think that's a pretty good midfield. I would personally, I know people hate this, I would go Jorginho, Partey, and Havertz. And the reason being is people can suggest Timber there. People can suggest X, Y, and Z. I wouldn't mind Nwaneri there. If Arteta thinks he's ready, I'm not in a position to say chuck in Nwaneri in this game. Mm-hmm. My opinion also is that I struggle to understand why we'd loan out Vieira if we didn't think Nwaneri was ready to be back up and to be able to step in this position. Now it's shit because ideally we could have done this in a Leicester game and then a Southampton game, then the North London derby. But circumstances have arisen that this is the case. So I probably say, all right, fine. I don't know about Nwaneri. I'll leave him. Havertz, Jorginho and Partey. And as I say, the main reason is because they've trained in those positions. They know the zones to be in. Fine. It's really, really concerningly lack of physicality in that midfield. But they know the shape. They know what passes to make. They know the role. Whereas you can't stick Timber's first game in midfield for us in midfield like some people are suggesting. I don't understand that logic. I don't know how that would function because fine, on FIFA it might work if his backup position is defensive midfield and he's got great physicality, pace, passing, whatever. But in practice, you've got a guy who's barely learnt the inverted left back role, also wasn't exactly thriving in it with all due respect, and now you're saying stick him in left centre mid, which is not the same as inverted left back either. Otherwise we'd have done the same with Zinchenko. So I think we will have to have a Jorginho and Partey midfield, but the adjustments rather than the personnel will have to be the system. We will have to make sure the gaps and spaces are a lot smaller rather than just hanging them out to dry and pretending Jorginho's Rice. But yeah, I don't know what you two think. I'm not convinced about Timber in left centre mid.
I wouldn't mind playing Timber in midfield. I also would understand if that's something that Arteta is looking to avoid trying at Spurs. You know, like you said, I think there is a time and a place for trying these things for the first time, and it's not one of your biggest away days of the season. That being said, I'm extremely unenthused by the idea of Jorginho and Partey in midfield together.
I would play, I'd play Calafiori left back in that case too, because if you can essentially, if you've got a pivot of those two, then you've got Calafiori nearby, then he can cover for some of the lack of physicality. But I'd have it as more of a traditional 4-2-3-1 rather than Jorginho left centre mid, even if he did actually play quite well there in some of the games last season with Rice. But again, with Rice being the prevailing point here.
That's the thing. I think if you have to play Jorginho and Partey together, play them as a double pivot. Don't try to make one of them a lone six. I think that's essentially suicide against Spurs. Because they will target that in transition. They'll target it anyway, but at least it'll be more of a compact shape. I do think that's what Arteta's going to do, ultimately. Jorginho, Partey next to each other as dual sixes, Havertz as a 10. We'll see if Calafiori's fit. If Calafiori's not fit, I don't mind having Timber at left back just kind of to be another kind of defensive boost. It's not
Yeah,
going to be
not
pretty.
Zinchenko. Sorry, it cannot be
Yeah.
Zinchenko left back, Jorginho and Partey. That is, I would turn the TV off.
Well, Zinchenko, Jorginho, and Partey are 3 of the 4 horsemen, so you can't have them together on the pitch like that. But yeah, I don't see Waneri starting, as cool as that would be. I do think Waneri is going to play in this game, but I think it's going to be more off the bench. I think Sterling will come off the bench, and yeah, I think that front 3 is going to probably be Saka, Jesus, Martinelli. Were you going to say something, James?
I was going to say, who would you play up front?
Who would I play, or who do I think?
Who would you play up front?
I would go with a midfield with Timber in it and not Havertz, so I could play Havertz up front.
Fair enough. Fair
Yeah.
enough. I understand that.
But I understand that Arteta is a little bit more conservative and doesn't want to try things and doesn't want to throw people into the deep end. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see if that works. We might be in for a long day. It might work to perfection. It really depends on how disciplined Jorginho and Partey are going to be out of possession. But yeah, Chitty, what do you think?
Yeah, I do. I really like the idea of playing Waneri as like an actual 10. So like playing a double pivot with Jorginho and Partey. I think like having that solid shape with the 4 and the 2, like a traditional Barclays 4-2 pivot, and then having Waneri as having as much freedom as possible.
Yeah.
In terms of not having to do so much. Like, I mean, he's going to have to obviously work out of possession, but like not having to be so structured in that sort of sense, but letting him have that freedom to create things in the final third. Let Saka come in a little bit to help him out, and then Martinelli beside him. Because I do kind of want to stick Havertz up top, because
The more I think about it, the more I agree with you, Chiddy, because I don't want to sacrifice our striker, because having Havertz up front, also for going long, is massive, because Jesus against their centre-backs is going to struggle.
I think, what we saw last season is that we gave a lot of possession to Spurs, and that was even with Rice in the team and everything. We let Spurs have a lot of the ball and were playing a bit more on the counter-attack. So having, Havertz there, as you saw with the goal last season where he played in Saka for the second, having him in those sort of zones, being able to drop in and play those balls in, I think is quite useful. I mean, he can do that from attacking mid-spot as well, but I mean, when someone's been so efficient up top, and he's probably someone that they're looking at and they're kind of afraid of, like, this guy's been scoring a lot of goals. So if you move him away from striker, it's already a mini win for them, because, I mean, let's face it, Jesus is nowhere near as scary to a team, at least in his current state, as Havertz is. So I feel like keeping him there is quite helpful.
It's also whether you sacrifice 2 positions or 1. If you play Havertz in right centre mid, then you're making that position worse and our striker position worse. If you play Nwaneri, then you're only making the right centre mid position worse. Boy, if the kids scored against Tottenham at their stadium, oh my goodness, imagine.
Yeah. Like,
that would be an automatic win in my eyes, to be honest. I don't care if it's a consolation goal and we're 4-0 down. If Waneri scores against Spurs,
whoa.
Points in my mind.
Be careful talking about consolation goals at 4-0 down, because there's a certain player who did that and then winked.
And he no longer is at my club.
Yeah.
Or at the other club he's at.
Yeah, can't get a game for Palace as well. So
well, more than that, he's had a big argument with them.
I saw that. Yeah, all the Palace fans want him out as well. So that was the player that Arteta trusted in the title race. So it's good to hear. But I
was having so much fun. You guys have ruined my day.
Just have to remind you, but I think that sort of also comes back to this whole thing of like Arteta has to be a bit adaptable and a bit not do the obvious thing, because I feel like when he brought in Holding in that title race, it was sort of like, he's the backup centre back, backup right centre back, just play him, even though clearly it wasn't the best thing to do, because he's just not at the level. And you do wonder if he tried maybe putting Kirill at centre back, or even I can't remember if we had any other right backs, but if we played was Ben White?
The suggestion was part. The suggestion was part.
Exactly. Yeah, that could potentially. I mean, I don't like Partey at right back, but that maybe could have worked a bit better, being a bit more compact than having Holding, Ruin, and the whole back line. So, like, finding solutions like that is what I think is probably the final stage of his development as a manager, is not just being stubborn about something until it's too late, but actually being adaptable, trying things out, and, you know, finding some different solutions when certain players can't play or are too tired to play, etc. So these next few games will be really interesting to see what he does.
Yeah, and Spurs are not a team that I'm scared of, right? You know, I think as much as people try to force the plaudits for Romero, I think that is a vulnerability for them. You know, I think Porro and Udogie can be exploited defensively. Their midfield.
Van de Ven might be out, by the way, if you didn't catch that.
Yes.
Oh,
So,
really? I did not know that. Who's behind Van de Ven? Is it still Davies?
No, what's his name?
Oh, yeah.
Ragushin.
Yeah. He's okay.
Yeah.
So, and
right.
Bisuma's got a knock. Bentancur is being banned for 6 to 12 games. I have no idea what happened. Something in an interview.
I think he said something about Heung-min Son, and no, not him. I don't say Heung-min Son specifically, but something about Koreans. I think he said.
Oh, really?
They will look the same, or something like that. I think.
12 games.
You think he and Enzo are friends?
I mean, won't say anything else, you know.
So point is, they're going to play an interesting midfield, because just to check quickly, the last game their midfield three was Bissouma, Maddison, and Sarr, but Bissouma's out and Bentancur will be out. So that means probably Bergvall. If Bissouma is actually out, it probably means Bergvall or Gray will start, and Bergvall's been playing more minutes. So Bergvall and Sarr is definitely a gettable midfielder. So our fans are crying about ours. They've got some players out, especially if Van de Ven's out. But Van de Ven might be back. But as I say, it's they've not got their full squad either.
Yeah.
According to Abu here, apparently Kulu's been playing in midfield for them. So maybe at like the 10th position.
Yes, he has. But still, who would they play? They'd have Kulusevski in the 10 instead of Maddison. They can't play him as a pivot, can they?
Yeah, they can't play both.
No.
They'd have to play someone next to Sarr.
Yeah. I mean, it's like you said, it's a very gettable midfield. They're going to have players out too, which is again why I'm not dooming too much over this, because now it's that, I mean, they're coming into this with issues too. So yeah, I feel like we have the squad to deal with it. I feel like it's just a matter of not just going down the depth chart like Arteta did in the spring of 2023. I think it's about really just trusting the players you have. And I think at this point, this is a squad that Arteta trusts, right? So it's about trusting the players you have, coming up with a dynamic that you think is going to work, and just putting them out there instead of just doing the thing that is next up in the rotation. So yeah, if that means Winere plays as the 10, I think that'd be great. If that means Timber plays as the left center mid, or we do something a little bit more creative than that, I'm also down for it. But
I think someone mentioned as well, like with the whole adapting to the players that you have available as well. Because I think someone mentioned when I think Kirill was playing left back and he was inverting, but it wasn't quite working, so he sort of switched it so that White was doing more of the inverting and Kirill was sort of playing a bit more traditional. And adapting to the players, even though you're still playing the same basic system, just little tweaks like that can just make everyone just play better and still play the sort of football that you want to play. So I think we're looking for that sort of thing Sunday.
Yeah, no. Well, it'll be. I'm still really excited for the game. I still have pretty high hopes for what the result's going to be, but we'll see. I wanted to ask you guys about the Odegaard situation, specifically in terms of whether or not he should have played, or whether we should have stepped in and either had him return from international duty or not let him go in the first place. Because I'm of the opinion that he shouldn't have gone. And I feel like there's a lot of people kind of coming out and saying that that's a big no-no. He's the captain for his team. It would be very disrespectful not to allow him to go, and players want to play for their nations. I understand all that. And to be fair, Norway doesn't boast the same level of talent that, an England or a France does, right? For them, it's Holland, Odegaard, then like Oscar Bob, among a few other players in terms of, like their top level talent. So to not have Odegaard would be a big miss for them. But, Odegaard had a pretty terrible game against Brighton, and I think that's because he basically got kicked off the pitch. He seemed a little hobbled during that game. So I think we had every reason to pull him out, especially when, Palmer and Foden and others are I don't want to say making up excuses, but, they're pulling out for much less significant reasons, right? If someone gets a cold, if someone, their aunt has a birthday party or something, they're out of international breaks. So I don't understand why we didn't take more care in this situation, because Odegaard, I think, is an equally important player for us, and we let him go to international break when he's clearly carrying something. Apparently he got injured, or he picked up a knock in training with Norway as well, and then continued to play. So, I mean, just, Chitty, I'll start with you. Kind of what's your take on whether or not we should have had Odegaard come back?
Yeah, like as you said, it's a tough one because, I mean, he's the captain of Norway as well as the captain of Arsenal, isn't he? So he's got a lot of loyalties to both teams. I think some people have mentioned, of course, that Norway didn't play in the Euros, so he didn't play international football all summer, and I guess he might have been. I don't think he wants to like waste the opportunity to play for Norway if he has the chance to play for Norway. I think the problem is because this international break, it's essentially was just the Nations League, so these are not even Euro qualifiers or World Cup qualifiers. These are just Nation League games. And yes, I know there's the way you can qualify via the Nation League through some playoff system. I don't know how it works, but generally, these games were the replacement for friendlies that used to be friendlies at this point. And now it's just Nations League to make it a bit more of a competitive sort of vibe. So these games are still not the most important games, and I think, especially at the start of the season, when you haven't had the best start to the season, picking up a knock, I think he should have been a bit more like mindful about, okay, there's still a very long season to go. I mean, they're going to be actual qualifiers coming up as well. You want to be fit and sharp for those. You want to actually be able to play well for your club and for your country. So I think considering the injury he picked up against Brighton, I think, he probably should have pulled out, especially because Holland's done it before as well.
I think the problem with that injury was it was a contact injury. I think he just got stood on, which means it's not like he was, as much as I'd love to say he shouldn't have played, and I think I did, it's not like you can say he's at increased risk of getting injured because he had a bruise on the top of his foot or because he was sore. It is just a bit of a freak injury. Something I just want to add to this point that someone pointed out, which is very interesting, is that because Arteta has focused on bringing in so many leaders, we have a lot of international players like Havertz, like Saka, like Rice, like Odegaard, who are big leaders in the national team.
Yeah.
So they can't go under the radar like a Palmer, like a Foden can, and just drop out because they're starters. So the manager's looking at them saying, I want you to develop relationships with your peers. That's probably why Rice and Saka played both games. And I want to see what you've got so we can continue to do this in the future. And unfortunately, because our players are so good and so important to their national teams, because you can say Foden got pulled out. I don't even know if Foden starts for England. Like, I know he did for some of the Euros, but there's a case that he might not have even started for Lee Carsley. So the fact that he pulled out was a lot easier, whereas our players are so important at national level. That's a problem. And there are, because of their leadership qualities, are also important to the squad itself, not just in terms of quality. It's a weird one, but yeah, I think it was difficult to pull him out.
Yeah.
It's kind of mad that point though, like how many leaders, and not just captains, but leaders of like international teams that we have. Because even like Calafiori, who you brought in, you saw the way he plays and how he's basically the anchor at the back. Like even from playing at left back, left centre back, he's basically the one who's having the most touches for Italy, conducting the whole play, and he's already such a big player.
Saliba will be very soon. He'll be
Saliba,
one of those guys.
I was just going to say, yeah.
Even David Raya, he's starting to play more games for Spain. Like obviously Gabriel, he's been a starter for Brazil. Like there are so many. The whole midfield basically are all starters for their teams, and Partey's a captain. Rice is one of the vice captains, I think. Odegaard captain. There's so many, so it's like it's a lot harder for our players to basically step back and say no, I don't want to play. But I think it was a freak injury, to be honest. Like you can roll your ankle like that at any point. Like you can do that in training, you can do that walking down the stairs. Like of course when it happens during international break, it's a bummer because it's like, should this game even be playing? Like should he be playing this game, etc. But it's just one of those injuries that happens during the season, and it's just a bad timing for us, really.
Well, and I guess that's the larger conversation that has to be had, right? Like, should we have had an international break 3 matches into the league? And, we're not the only ones who've suffered from it. Nathan Ake appears to have suffered, a pretty serious injury. I haven't heard more since it happened. But, is the Nations League and kind of, these international breaks full of friendlies and rather pointless games contributing to this issue where, players are, they're playing super intense league games and then they're going to play, 2 more Champions League games than they did last season. And they're going to play domestic cups and all that stuff. And every few weeks I have to, hop on a plane, go play, 2 or 3 international matches. And if these guys are important, like we're talking about here, they're going to play full 90s and then they're going to come back and go straight back into, the club football.
Do you know what annoys me is some of the discourse from fans where fans will see this happen to players. So Bernardo Silva and De Bruyne recently came out and said it basically is disgraceful how many, and you see sometimes Arsenal fans just trying to point score and say, "Oh, just get on with it. You get paid 300,000 a week," and it's like our players are getting injured because of literally what they're trying to say, and also just in general, that has nothing to do with it. All right, they're getting paid 300,000 a week, so make them play every day, make them play 2 games a day. Where does it end? Like it's completely. They train every day. It's not like they play once a week and they sit on their arse the rest of the week. It's a profession. They're getting paid huge sums of money, which admittedly is ridiculous, but unfortunately it's the nature of sport. All sports have it, where so many people around the world are being entertained by it. Sponsors put all their money into it and it lands in the players' pockets. You cannot just then blame the players and say, get on with it, play every 3 games. It's a really weird culture, and some people like yourself, Sham, understand it, and others just really weirdly like push against it so hard for no reason.
That is probably one of my biggest pet peeves in football is when people say, "Oh, you're paid so and so a week, get on with it." You know why they're paid £300,000 a week? Because they spent their entire childhood and adolescence and young adult years playing football every day, going to training, keeping their body fit, staying out of trouble, not really having a life, listening to everything that their coaches and their managers and their agents and their advisors tell them to do, right? And then on top of that, they can't, once they make it, these guys can't go anywhere without people running up to them and putting a camera in their face or asking for an autograph or asking for a picture. There's no privacy. And on top of that, there are brands associated with these guys now. Okay. Like if you're going to your job and you're making £50,000 a week or £50,000 a year and you're complaining about this, like, yeah, you probably deserve a bigger paycheck, but it's not like if you went out for dinner, some kid's going to run up to you and put his iPhone in your face and be like, can I take a picture with you? Like, I'm your biggest fan. Like, you're not going to have a line of people out the door trying to like get in your face and your personal space and like ruin the evening for you. You don't have New Balance, doing entire marketing campaigns around you.
So when a footballer comes out and speaks about mental health, because this, I guess, is a physical thing, but the same happens when players talk about their mental health.
Yeah.
How can you have mental health issues? You're getting paid 100,000, 200,000 a week. And it's like, it just doesn't make sense. Like, think about it. I don't know.
You stop being a human once you get over a certain paycheck. Do you not hear about that? Like, you stop having emotions, feelings. You just
Well, that's exactly why they have mental health issues, because people are coming out and saying who gives a shit about like how they're doing, right?
Yeah.
Just go out there and kick the ball, robot man. Like,
Yeah.
That was directed at Haaland.
Yeah. Man, I'm not gonna lie. When I saw Haaland like walking up to Odegaard after trying to console him after he went down, I was just saying, they're just like, I know you're being helpful, but you are the last person I want to look at right now.
He's probably asking him how many weeks he's you out for.
So am I going to see you at the Etihad? That's not what he said. But tell you what, one last thing before we go. How do you guys actually feel about the Lee Carsley tenure? Because I do think that's been an interesting development. And sounds like the FA are going to try to look at other candidates. But I personally was really impressed by how you guys played over the international break. How are you guys feeling about Carsley?
Yeah, I think he's had a good start. I think the squad that he picked was pretty refreshing. I think it's nice to see some of the players, especially Angel Gomez, getting the chance to actually play for England. I think one thing Southgate probably didn't do too well is looking at English players who play abroad, especially guys who really deserve to play. I feel
Southgate didn't know Angel Gomez existed.
Exactly. I feel like there's always a stigma of if an English player plays abroad, they're sort of already down in the pecking order, no matter how good they are. So I think the fact that he just managed, him knowing the players really helped in terms of he played with them under 21s and everything. But showing that players could actually, someone like him who's, I guess the stigma is he's very short, basically. And him playing in a sort of deep midfield role is something that I guess is not traditionally very English. You don't have a 5'4" deep midfielder. That's not how it works in England. You got to be big and strong and run about and kick it and proper Barclays sort of football. And he's not a Barclays man, clearly. But I think having these sort of players and playing Trent at right back, there's very basic things that he's doing, but it just clearly
isn't that a mad statement to make, though?
Wow,
Lee Carsley is brave because he played. Yeah.
And one thing on the Trent discourse, because I think a lot of people were tweeting oh yeah, it's great to see he's played well, but he's only playing well against Ireland and Finland. How is he going to cope against the likes of France and Brazil and Spain? And this is someone who started back-to-back Champions League finals. This is someone who played against peak Ronaldo in the Champions League final when he was 19 years old or whatever. He's more than capable of coping against these players. And at the end of the day, we should stop having this mentality of let's just cope and let's just defend against the other team. Let's go at them, and they should be scared of England. Look how many good attackers that England have, and you're talking about, how are we going to cope with these players that other teams have? How are they going to cope with us is the question we should be asking. And
a good manager can protect him like that.
Yeah,
he doesn't need. I'm not suggesting he needs someone playing right wing back in front of him, but if you just stick someone with a decent amount of recovery pace at right centre back like Gehi, then it's fine. Then it's a non-issue.
Also, Rice playing more on the right side, I think, is also very helpful.
Yeah, exactly. If you have him covering, he's got the athleticism to cover easily, and then you let Trent do what he's best at, which is hurting opposition defenses. And he can do it against any team in the world. We see that every week. So hopefully it'll be the start of more things to come. And I think it's natural. Lee Carsley I mean, we've seen how with Spain. I think who was the under 21s manager? The manager they have who won the Euros. He was the under 21s, wasn't he? Yeah. So that sort of pathway does seem to work quite well.
And
So I think
Scaloni, if I'm not mistaken, right?
yes, I think yes, he was for Argentina. So clearly, being within the system, knowing young players in the system really does help with like building a nice young, exciting team. So I would want to keep him. Yeah.
Just to finally add, I think it's interesting.
Nice.
Pretty good point from Abu.
Did they do that? Maybe they did the coaching badges together. The final point I just want to say also is I do think Lee Carsley has like a weirdly impossible job, because how I can't remember how many games he has. He either has like, does he have 6 games?
Six games, yeah. But they're all
So-
quite easy, aren't they?
That's what I mean. How do you impress so much? Because you have to win convincingly, but win showing a good style of play. So there's so many different things he's juggling, and even still, just winning convincingly, I don't know how he can convince the FA that he's the guy, but the signs are very positive. I like what I see. So yeah, give him a chance. I think there's such an English arrogance that we need the big name, the Fabio Capello. But as we've seen, other nations that were humbled themselves and said, we'll have a De La Fuentes, we'll have a Scaloni, they were successful because there's less, especially in a team like England where there's so many big names and so much friction with the media of who's going to start. If you've got a big name as manager, that's only going to exacerbate the problem. So have a manager who can make these decisions. Don't put him under so much pressure. Allow him to do what he's trying to do. And if it doesn't work out, say sorry, on to the next one. But just the way the English media is set up is such a toxic environment, going back to what we spoke about earlier, for anyone to succeed. And I think for an England manager to do so, it's going to take some budging with that, because a big problem perhaps that Southgate, it's easy for Carsley to take risks when he's interim manager. For Southgate to make those big changes and to take those risks, it was very difficult because there was so much pressure on him. And unfortunately for him, he did take the safe route, but the safe route was working most of the time. He was getting let out, he was getting out of jail, but it was just about working for him. And if he did win the Euros, if we did beat Spain, no one would ever say a thing bad about him. So people, it really is the case that it's a lot easier in Carsley's position to make risks. As soon as he gets the job, I think the perception will vastly shift on him. And I think the media will start saying, if we lost a game, oh, what about this Angel Gomez guy? He's not got the physicality. So I just think it's a huge problem with English media. And unfortunately, I don't think it's something that's going to change soon.
No,
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's just how they operate, really. But I like what I've seen from Carsley. I think, like you guys said, playing Trent at right back really changed things. I think having a runner and Gordon at left wing was great.
Yeah.
Not reinventing, but putting Grealish at the number 10 position when I think we've all generally kind of been down on him recently, and seeing what he can still do in those circumstances was actually really impressive, both from Grealish and from Carsley. And yeah, Carsley strikes me as the kind of manager who understands the talent that England have at their disposal, right? And they have the talent to control games, to dominate possession, to create a bunch of chances, and not just, sit back and hoof the ball up to Kane and hope, one of the superstars can come up with a moment. So,
and he's not been a yes man so far either. Did you see? He said he doesn't sing the national anthem. That's not his thing.
Yeah.
And
That rattled a lot of people. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, look, if Pochettino comes out and says, I'm not going to sing the Star Spangled Banner with everybody, I'm going to be like, all right, that's fine. Yeah. But there's going to be some guy there's going to be like some, Cowboys fan in Texas being like, well, how dare you not sing the national, this is America, God damn it. Yeah, we are going to ruin the World Cup for ourselves. I can already tell. But
Can't wait.
Yeah. But we'll put a bow on it there. We've been going for about 90 minutes. I'm just, I feel better about the weekend coming up. I think we can, do a number on Spurs, and we'll see. So, there's about 7,700 of you watching right now. Thank you so much for being here with us. Thank you for tuning in. We love you for spending the time with us. Chitty, thank you so much for being here. You guys can follow Chitty at Chitty AFC. You guys can follow James at AFC James. James, also thank you for being here. You can follow myself at Shamsdale. You can follow the pod at This Week Arsenal. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the buttons, like, comment, subscribe. If you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, please do leave the 5-star review. Really does help out. And we'll see what happens this week. And we'll be back next week to do winners and losers from the Spurs match. Hopefully it'll be easier to talk about the winners and the losers. We'll also talk a little bit about the City case. I don't really know if there's going to be much development on that front, but we'll see. Looking forward to doing that with all of you guys. And until then, take care. Be a gooner, not a goon. And we will talk to you soon. Until then, bye. Bye.
Maybe we'll have a good surprise for you.